Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our multi-platform service of the Unitarian Church of Staten Island. We're so grateful to have you. For those joining us in person, please be sure to wear your mask through the service and to maintain social distancing. And during the service, as long as you're wearing your mask, you can sing along with the hymns. Those who are attending in person are also invited to join us in the parish hall for our coffee hour after the service. For those joining us online, we send special greetings to you, and we hope you take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat box this morning. After service, you're all invited to your virtual coffee hour. For those joining us in person, we gently remind you to please silence your mobile devices at this time. And now let us prepare for the morning service.
These words from Isaiah. Out of all the Old Testament, this verse is probably the single verse in the Old Testament that has had the greatest influence on the New Testament, Christianity, and the world. Therefore, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel.
I invite you to join me in lighting our chalice. You can find the affirmation in your order of service. We light this chalice in the search for truth and the spirit of love. We unite in worship and fellowship. As an extension of lighting our chalice, I want to take a moment of silence to light these candles for some of the names of those who have recently been affected by police brutality. We cannot cover all the names of those affected. We light a candle for the life of Deshaun Whitaker. We light a candle for the life of Aaron Mensah. And we light a candle for the life of Kiaza Miller. May these lights be a symbol of our commitment to continue the work of racial justice and to proclaim that Black Lives Matter. Please join us in singing hymn 56, Bells in the High Tower, in your gray hymnal.
Bells in the high tower, ringing o'er the wide hills, rocking the winter, singing like the spring bells. Bells in the high tower, in the gold foretelling, the springs of dwelling. Bells in the old tower, like a summer chatter, from darting brightness, as the grapes turn mellow. Bells in the old tower, now the wine is ready, new life beginning. Bells in the stone tower, echoing the song sound of autumn's mill wheel, as the leaves come round. Bells in the
Now is the time in our service for joys and sorrows. If you're visiting us for the first time, now is the time to introduce yourself. For those who are gathering in person, we invite you to raise your hand, and I'll come over to you and give you the microphone so you can share with us. We invite you to share what's in your heart. For those who are joining us online, we invite you to type into that chat your joys and sorrows, and Sally will read them aloud. We invite you to share also what is in your heart.
Yes, right.
Any hands? Anybody? Okay, here's Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Santo. The last time I spoke to Larry was a few days ago, Larry Schwabacher, and he was still in Staten Island University North, but he was waiting that day, and I think that was Thursday, waiting that day to be transferred to Golden Gate for rehab. So he was kind of looking forward to that as his next step to getting home. I want to say that I have, it's not really a sorrow. It's just, I was sorry to see my granddaughter from Vancouver go back to Vancouver. That was so much fun to have both granddaughters here. But I'm looking forward to seeing my sister Helen from Florida, who's going to stay with me because we have a family event next Sunday. So.
Anybody? Oh, let's see.
Hi, good morning. I'm Chris. Spent yesterday with former member Susan McAnanima. Some of you may recall Susan. She lives up in Yonkers. So she was down yesterday and we did the tour so she can recall, Staten Island and figure out why the heck she ever left, but I won't go there. But we had a great visit and Susan sends good greetings to everybody. She and George send good greetings to everybody. And this is a birthday week for me. Yay. So my birthday is on Wednesday.
A joy that my daughter Annabeth is home for the next few weeks. I picked her up Friday from the airport coming in from Berlin. So excited to have her home.
Anybody else? Oh, John.
Well, we have a joy, Jim. It's Kathy Santo's birthday this week. And we have a birthday cake for her. I'm sorry, we didn't realize it was your birthday too. We have a birthday cake in the back.
Hi, Kathleen Lyon. Some of you know me. Maybe some of you don't know me. I'm Darrell Berger's wife. Very glad to be here finally this fall to see you all again and enjoy the service. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh.
Well, Chris reminded me that December is a big month for the Unitarian Church of Staten Island because it's Chris's birthday. Jill Huckle, who lives in Portland now, it's her birthday this week. It was Richard Curry's birthday is on the same day as mine. And Rachel Borton, who our previous minister's daughter's birthday is the same day as mine as well. And Bruce Gillam's birthday is on December 25th.
Anybody else? No.
Okay. Well, Suzanne O'Callahan says, happy birthday, Chris. And Ruth Benson said, I had a lovely time at my granddaughter's wedding celebration, which was lovely and elegant. Some pics are on my Facebook page. However, I did come back with COVID. I'm okay now. Oh, and Suzanne says something else. John was in the hospital yesterday. John Walker. I hope he's okay.
Okay, I have a joy. My grandchildren will be in a Christmas show next Friday, and my 8-year-old granddaughter is singing a solo. She's so excited about that. I wanted to also express my sincere gratitude, not only to Sally and to Mary Campbell and to all of you who donated to our holiday card. Thank you so much. Bless your heart. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Let us join together in a moment of silent meditation. Amen. The reading today will take a bit longer than usual, but I hope you'll find it worthwhile. As many of you know, I'm a graduate of Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And now it's been a couple of months now. The backfield coach, the defensive backfield coach of the football team, Dan Jackson, tweeted this: Kanye is 2 steps ahead of everyone. Rappers and athletes are taught they need to think the same as the media and politicians. If they have an opinion opposite of the mainstream, they are called crazy. More people need to wake up and speak their mind. So a support for Kanye West from our assistant football coach at Vanderbilt. He quickly apologized, and they said the affair has been handled internally, which means he still has his job because, firing a person today for good or ill is a long, laborious process. But anyhow, some of my friends thought that was an inadequate response, because what was also lacking from not only the athletic director, but from the dean of the college himself was an affirmation against anti-Semitism, regardless of what behavior of their defensive halfback coach was. And I was moved to write a letter to the editor of the Vanderbilt Hustler, which is the campus newspaper. And it's called, Is That a Jewish Name? Dear editor, given recent events, I thought your readers might find my experience of anti-Semitism at Vanderbilt over 50 years ago of interest. I went through fraternity recruitment as a first year in the fall of 1966. I was quite excited about the possibility of joining a fraternity, as I had been told that Greeks dominated the social scene. After visiting several, however, I was confused. I felt like I was being ignored, almost invisible. I knew as a working class kid from Northern Ohio, I didn't have much social cachet to offer, but it wasn't like I was the only nondescript freshman going through Rush. First year men were divided into groups of a couple of dozen, and each group visited each house for maybe an hour or so. The groups were divided alphabetically by last name. So in my peer group, I spent a lot of time with Borowitz, Blumenthal, and Blumberg. I became friends with Borowitz, Blumenthal, and Blumberg. They were nice guys, and I enjoyed their company. I found myself talking with them at mostly all of the houses. Throughout recruitment, I got the impression that none of the fraternities were interested in me enough to get to know me, except one, Alpha Epsilon Pi. When I shared my confusion about this situation with Borowitz, Blumenthal, and Blumberg, they immediately enlightened me. They think you're Jewish, they told me. They thought this was hilarious. I was confused. I hadn't even known that I had a so-called Jewish last name, or that only 2 fraternities accepted Jews as brothers, and those houses were the Jewish houses. Most of the houses didn't want me because they thought I was Jewish, and the Jewish houses were uninterested because they knew I was not. At some houses, almost no brothers spoke to the Jewish group. In other houses, there was not that kind of division, but even then, the conversation was superficial. We all became Alpha Epsilon Pi's. I did have to explain to that fraternity that, yes, I understood what I was getting into. I received much unsolicited advice in my dorm that joining a Jewish fraternity would be the end of my social life and that people would think I was Jewish. Oh, the horrors. It was one of the best decisions of my college life. 2 years later, we pledged the first African-American brother in the history of Vanderbilt. That experience was the most enlightening one I had during my time in Nashville, as I learned firsthand what prejudice and power together can do, and also that good faith and courage can overcome both. In the spring of 1970, I became the first non-Jewish president of Alpha Epsilon Pi. A few years ago, I visited the German village in the Black Forest, where my family originated before coming to America in 1847. I met some cousins. One was of my mother's generation. She wanted to make sure I was from the right Berger family, as it is a very common German name. She had an old folded piece of paper that looked official. She said that it had her ancestors on it. After a bit of conversation between her and my interpreter, she was convinced that we were indeed cousins. She showed me the piece of paper. It was a letter on official government stationery. At the top was a swastika. The letter declared that the bearer of this letter was not Jewish, showing her family tree as proof. That letter saved her life and enabled her and her children and grandchildren to be standing there talking with me after all those years. It would not have occurred to me in 1966 that I could have used one of those letters at Vanderbilt to get into a restricted fraternity. In fact, needing one is what convinced me that the last thing I wanted to do was join one of those fraternities. That is my story of anti-Semitism at Vanderbilt in days gone by. I am pained in my heart to hear that there are still such stories of anti-Semitism to be told today. I was ordained in 1974 to the Unitarian Universalist ministry, which requires no doctrinal test or particular belief. This path appealed to me after these events as an undergrad. I served 5 churches and retired, more or less, in 2017. Sincerely, Darrell Berger, Bachelor of Arts, 1970, Master of Divinity, 1973. May we have this morning's offering, please?
Now is the time in our order of service where we take an offering. We know it is the gifts of all of us that help support our ability to thrive and gather. For those attending in person, we'll be passing around the collection plate. For those online, links and instructions will be posted in the chat. You can mail us a check or donate through the PayPal giving page on our website. Please give as generously as you can. Our offerings will be gratefully received.
Thank you. That was really great. I really like that. A great songwriting team, Gustav Holt and Christina Rossetti, as they were in the Brill building, as I recall it. Yeah.
Please now join us for our next hymn, number 225, in the great hymn. O come, Emmanuel.
Please be seated. Now, I'm sure most of you know that baseball players have a lot of different names for pitches. It may just look like the batter's swinging at a pitch and then he's swinging at another one, but sometimes it's a fastball, sometimes it's a curveball, sometimes it's a slider or a cutter or a split finger or a splitter or a palm ball or a knuckler or a knuckle curve. Little differences here make for big differences at the plate. It's absolutely essential for baseball players to be able to identify a lot of different kinds of pitches. And it's absolutely essential for Old Testament prophets to have a lot of different names for God. Adonai, Lord. Elohim, the Creator. Elyon, Most High. Shaddai, Almighty. And Yahweh, that's the name that we never speak. That's the name that of the burning bush that Moses spoke to. And it's because you don't say that name that God has all these other names. You never really say his name. You say the Most High, the Almighty, whatever. And the one that we focus on at this time of year is Emmanuel, God with us. O come, Emmanuel, has its origins at least in the 9th century. It's a very, very old form. It was really a chant before it was hymn. It sort of sounds like a chant, doesn't it? Can't you imagine monks with their candles going through dank halls at night singing O come, Emmanuel? Now, how God is understood depends on the context. For instance, Psalm 139 says, the writer says, "Whither shall I go from thy spirit?" In other words, how can I escape God? And in Jeremiah 23, God says, "Can anyone hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him? Do I not fill the heaven and earth?" God often speaks rhetorically. God is both near and far. He's everywhere. He's nowhere. Basically, the Old Testament can be distilled down to one question. Where is God? God, where are you? And God is constantly saying, I'm right here. As a matter of fact, not only am I'm not right here, I'm everywhere. How can you not know where I am? I'm everywhere. So, well, maybe the fact that you're everywhere makes it hard to discern where you are if you're everywhere. He says, I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. I make myself manifest all the time. Well, you got a funny way of showing it. You got the pestilence, you got the disease, you got the end of slavery, you got all this stuff. Wait a second, God says, remember that Red Sea thing that I did? Well, yeah, that day was different from all other days. Now, Isaiah is kind of a different sort of prophecy, the prophecy of Emmanuel. First of all, you should know that Isaiah made the prophecy about 700 years before the first Christmas. So, as they say in the stock market, it's not only being right, it's when you were right. You know, so being right 700 years after the prophecy, when he'd had a whole lot of times when the prophecy hadn't been fulfilled, it's like finally the horse came in. Finally, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you shall call him Emmanuel, God with us. And 700 years later, there was the New Testament. You should know, just as an aside, that the word that Isaiah used is not the Hebrew word for virgin. It's the Hebrew word for young woman. And you should also know there is a Hebrew word for virgin that is not used in the Old Testament. The Hebrew word that is used is young woman. Just know that. And also, after this monumental, this earth-shattering prophecy that was saved for 700 years, waiting for it finally to come true, is followed a few verses later with a prophecy that somebody will take a pickaxe and cut away brambles and weeds so that ox and cattle can graze. Now that's not a long shot prophecy. You know, that happens a lot. Now, the born of a virgin thing, betting on that was sort of like betting on Bitcoin, right? But betting on that somebody would clear space so the cattle could grain, that's treasury bills. Now, Isaiah made a lot of prophecies. And if you're going to read any part of the Old Testament, I recommend Isaiah. First of all, it's beautiful writing, and it's lamentation. It's a very committed person to the Old Testament vision of God, trying to understand it and trying to speak to his people to live a better and just life. It's full of all sorts of wonderful stuff. It's an inspired voice to call his people back to righteousness again and again. Because I feel that prophecy is not really about predicting the future as seeing clearly what's happening in front of you. That's the true nature of prophecy. But what is he remembered for? The virgin thing and the Emmanuel. He's a one-hit wonder prophet. If Isaiah was Bobby Gentry, this prophecy was his ode to Billy Joe. Now, God was pretty smart to send his son to earth in human form. Because when you think about it, the whole sin of humanity is being too much caught up with itself, right? The whole Narcissus thing from Greek mythology. Now, so what better way to finally have God show himself to these prideful people than to take their own form? And also to be a God that lives and dies. If there's one thing that probably separates God from his people more than anything else, it's like, how can I relate to God? Because I'm going to die and you just abide. But to be sent to earth, to experience that death like his creation, that's a heck of an idea. It really is. Even if you're an atheist, even if you have no religion or a Unitarian Universalist or whatever you want to call it, what is the closest event to God or the divine that you can think of? The birth of a child, right? It's the other side of the abortion issue that I wish everybody could agree on. Nobody really knows. Life begins here, it begins there, it begins here, it begins there. Here's the baby. Take care of the baby. Does it really matter that much? The conception, again, it's hung up on the conception thing. Deal with the baby. Which reminds me, the governor of Florida and the governor of Texas with their new idea of no room at the inn, well, frankly, the hell with them. That they would send Jesus, Mary, and Joseph up to Connecticut and New Jersey to be taken care of. And the Christians down there accept that. The birth of a child really brings it together for us humans. It's a mystery. It forces us to look at the unknown, at things far larger than ourselves, to love and empathy, and also shows us our shortcomings, our pride in how inadequate we are in the face of these human situations, whether it be immigration or the choice of women. But it's also as close to a universal holiday as Christianity really gets, because you can strip it of its dogma and the specificity of its words. You don't have to know anything about the Old Testament prophecy. You don't really have to know anything about Christianity to just enjoy this holiday and to join with it. It welcomes people more than any other Christian holiday. That Jesus is human and God. That takes us one small step away from what is Christianity's really great sin of pride, and to help us understand that you and I are also human and God. It wasn't just this one time, it's for all times. The miracle keeps repeating, and it's been repeated in you as well. Now, I know some people will say, I believe that when I die, I'm dead, it's all over, that's the end. It's like the final episode of The Sopranos. right? You watch that, it's just fade to black, boom, it's over. But I watched that final episode of The Sopranos. You know what I did when it was over? I changed the channel and there was another program. It wasn't actually the end. It was the end of some things, the beginnings of others, some things I was in the middle of. I think that's what happens, really. We change the channel. We turn to another station. There's a lot of bandwidth out there, a lot of bandwidth, a lot of content. It's that spark of the divine that we see in the new babe that doesn't go away when you grow up. It gets hidden, it gets denied, it can lose its way, but it doesn't die, it doesn't leave. Not in any of us, even the worst among us, even the governors of Texas and Florida. And when we die, we still don't die. That's the lie. We go on, not as a ghost or as an individual spirit, but in that true nature of God that is in us, that the Old Testament keeps searching for. That's the babe in the manger. That's what we behold each season, which starts out on hymns of grayness and despair and ends on joy. We behold Emmanuel, God with us. The closing hymn is by Norbert Čapek, who is our guy in Czechoslovakia and one of the great, probably the greatest 20th century Unitarian poet and humanist. And I really like his hymns, and hymn number 8 is on now.
Spirit, Father, Spirit, where are you? In the skies all made of flawless sound your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean deep and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples through the sky. What to bid you, what to call you, who am I? I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears in
I invite you to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You can find the affirmation in our order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, for these we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, and he shall save his people from their sins. And now all this was done that it might be fulfilled that was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted means God with us.